So, what's the best way to plan a dream RV trip? Traditional paper guides, online search like Google, or can you leverage AI chatbots? Today, we'll show you how we used all three of these tools, plus conversations with friends and relatives who've done the trip already, to create a dream vacation to some of the most iconic national parks out west. And most of this video will be dedicated to leveraging AI chatbots and how to construct queries to actually build a detailed itinerary that you'll be able to use to enjoy your awesome trip out west. So let's get started with the video.
So let's get started with the planning process. We had been thinking about this trip for several years, so anytime we ran across a friend or relative or colleague who took a similar trip, we asked a lot of questions, and we came up with a pretty good idea of the parks we wanted to visit on the trip. We weren't really sure how long it was going to take or exactly what we needed to see while we were there, so that's where the paper tour guides and maps came in. And of course, we did Google searches where we went to park websites and we looked at travel blogs. So we really got a lot of great information that we pulled together, and we had a pretty good idea of what we wanted to do and a sense of how long it was going to take to see each park. So here's our list of parks and points of interest that we wanted to see on this trip. And we would be departing from Columbus, Ohio, and returning there. One other thing we had to consider was that we wanted to stop and see friends in Dallas, Texas for a couple days as part of this trip. So some other things we knew before we sat down with the AI chatbots. We knew we wanted to leave on September 4th. We knew the duration was going to be about 6 weeks. We knew we wanted to start with a more northern route to try to avoid the snow and come back on the southern route back to Ohio. And our transportation and our lodging for this trip would be our 23-foot motorhome. So now I'm going to go ahead and recreate my initial interaction with an AI chatbot in planning this vacation. In that case, it was ChatGPT back in February of 2024. For demonstration purposes today, I'm going to use Claude because in the end, it was the best at creating the itinerary and the detailed schedules that we needed. So here was our first request. Can you help me plan an RV trip to national parks out west? Claude comes back, happy to, but I've got some questions. How much time do you have? Which season are you planning? What specific parks are you interested in visiting? And what's the size of your RV? So based on the chatbot's questions from our first request, we went ahead and created an updated request. We said we wanted to do a 6-week trip. We were leaving from Columbus, Ohio. The parks we wanted to visit were listed. And we told the chatbot that we were traveling in a 23-foot Class C RV. Again, we asked for it to create a good itinerary based on good campgrounds for our RV size. So we can see that it came back. Week 1, we're going to drive to Mount Rushmore. It's going to take 3 days. In week 2, Mount Rushmore, the Badlands, and it says we're going to stay in Cedar Pass Campground. In week 3, we're going to stay at Yellowstone, and so forth. This is interesting, but one of the things we really had a question about was how long did we need to stay in each park and what should we do when we were at each park? It took about 10 more rounds to add enough detail to get the exact information that we wanted from the chatbot. One of the things we learned was that it was much easier to create a Word document or a Google Docs document and editing your query there and copying and pasting the results of those edits into the chatbot. So that's what I've done here. I have pasted in our very detailed request. In the process of creating a Word document, we also laid it out in more of a template-like form. So we have our start date, our duration, where we're starting, where we're finishing, something about us and what we prefer to do, our preferred nightly accommodations, the parks that we want to go to, and other points of interest, information about our transportation, our activity preferences, and some details that we want, including some formatting, and then some special considerations at the end. And I did this in part so that this template could serve me on future trips and that I could share it with you. So let's go ahead and get the chatbot to respond to this detailed request. In this case, Claude has provided us an itinerary for 36 days. We'll go back and look at the detail in a minute. Explains that all campground reservations should be made well in advance. Weather conditions in September can vary significantly, can affect us. Talks about generator hours, talks about shuttle services in the parks. And over here, we have additional information. Claude summarizes what it did in the itinerary, and it has some key points for us to consider. It mentions that mid-September avoids the peak rush. It's included notes about the bike friendliness of each park. We requested that in our detail. It has the 3-day trip to Dallas to visit our friends structured in there, and it prioritized in-park locations with electrical hookups whenever possible. So one of the things we learned along the way is that you definitely want to camp in the national parks because you have to go through an entrance gate every morning if you don't, and those lines can stack up and you can wait in line as long as 2 hours. So we have our itinerary. We'll go here, just pick a spot in the middle. Day 9, travel to Yellowstone. So we're going from Custer State Park to Yellowstone. 400 miles, about 7 hours, enter through the east entrance. That was one of the things we requested, was that it specify which entrance we entered the park through. And it tells us the campground, and it gives us a secondary recommendation. Both of these parks are in Yellowstone Park. Based on our specifications, if they weren't, it would say that they're out of the park. So has all of this information. So then the next step was we had it create 2 summary documents for us. Here's the request for our first summary table. And here's our summary table. It gives us our dates, how many nights we're staying at each location, the name of the park or destination, the campground we're staying in, is the campground inside our destination, the address, how many miles we traveled to get there, and what the next destination is, and how far we'll have to travel to get there, and our mode of transportation. So based on our experience actually taking this trip, we also needed another document. We needed a daily summary of everything we were doing, where we were staying, all the information right at our fingertips, so that if anything went wrong or we needed to make a change, or we were just curious what we were doing tomorrow, we had one source for all that information. So over here, you can see the details of the columns that we requested. And notice it's asking if we want it to continue with the remaining days. We'll go ahead and look at this. So we have the date, the day, the start location, the end city, the destination we're going to. Is it bike friendly? Which gate are we coming to? The address if we need to plug in GPS. What we're doing that day. Are we traveling? That was important to know in our RV. And then over here, how many miles was it to the next destination? What's the primary campground we have for the night, and the amenities, reservation info for those campgrounds, how far in advance do we need to book, and what the backup campground was. So now you can see in one place we had everything we need to finalize our plans and then manage our travel while we were out there. Gives us some booking tips, talks about state park campgrounds, private campgrounds, the entrance fee to the national parks, or you can get a pass. Talks about campground restrictions, including generators. Some parks require shuttle during peak hours. Bike rentals are available, okay? So we want it to continue, and we ran into this several times, so you have to pay attention. So it's continuing to build out the itinerary. Now we have everything we need to finish planning this trip, because we have not audited the activities or the number of days of stay or even the mileage between locations as part of the process of generating all this. What were the lessons learned during this exercise? First of all, we learned that building out a document outlining the details of your request is very important. And the easiest way to deal with detailed requests is to copy and paste the information from that document into the chatbot. We also learned that the more detail you provide, the better the response will be. We learned that we shouldn't be afraid to experiment with the content and structure of our requests. Through experimentation, we learned that we have to check the information provided by the chatbot. In our case, we received bad advice on routing, distances traveled, and campground locations during the various iterations of our interaction with the chatbots. The easiest way to do this is to edit the document, refeed it to the chatbot after you adjust, and try again. You can build off your request and ask for additional information. For example, in this video, we built out our detailed itinerary, and once we were happy with it, we asked it for tables outlining the nightly stays and the detailed daily activities. And finally, all chatbots are not created equal. Experiment with them to see which is better at performing the task you have in mind. As far as our last comment, let's talk about the performance of the 5 chatbots we tested on this task. First of all, they were the best tools for this task. Claude was the best. It excelled at creating the detailed itineraries and was very consistent. However, the free version would not complete the task during heavy usage. The Perplexity free version, however, was equally capable and just as accurate. In the honorable mention category was ChatGPT. It worked well, but it consistently dropped information that we requested. But once we reminded it of the request, it would add it back to the itinerary. And finally, there are the tools to avoid for this task. Copilot really struggled providing accurate distances and was very inconsistent with routing. It would probably work if that was the only chatbot you had access to, but it would take a lot of additional effort. And finally, there was Gemini, which totally struggled with this request. It was inaccurate on distances, its routing was poor, and it was very inconsistent. Basically, it was unusable for this task.
You now know how to use chatbots to build out a detailed itinerary for your dream vacation. If you start by building out a detailed document outlining your request and then edit it as you want to refine your request, we found that that was the most effective way to deal with chatbots on these types of inquiries. I have included links to all 3 of the documents we used to create the itinerary and the detailed tables. This should make it easy for you to download them and modify them to meet your unique needs. For example, if you're flying out to Las Vegas and traveling in a rental car and staying in hotels and lodges, you can go ahead and make that change to my detailed request and feed that to the chatbot for it to generate your itinerary. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know in the comments if there are any topics you'd like me to cover in future videos. To watch more videos like this, please consider subscribing, and I hope to see you in the next video. Have a great day.